called. What do we mean when we say called? Well, at the very basic level, it's God's summoning of a believer through Jesus and the Holy Spirit. It's an emotional thing. People will often say, I just felt called by God. You say, well, explain it to me. How do you know? I just felt it. It was just right here. When people say or ask me, how did you know that you were meant to be a pastor? How did you know it was supposed to be that way? You can say, it was here. It was that longing. You guys, perhaps, that are engaged in some ministry of your own that are out there, Festus can say, we can ask Festus, why do you share the gospel so fervently? And Festus might say, I just am called. It just comes out. That's how it is. So it's an emotional thing, and it's both general and specific. It's general unto salvation and the common Christian ministry. Everybody is called that is a Christian. You are called by God to do something. You are called by God to be here, to be a part of His family. And it is specific into what God has for you in particular. My work is not Patty's work, which is different than Alvin's work and Don's work and Dolores's. We all have a specific thing that God is prompting and drawing us into. And we can get into a lot of trouble when I use my calling as a measuring stick against you. Say, well, God called me to do this and to live like this. How come you're not doing that? And you respond back, well, God has called me into a different way, into a different work, into a different opportunity. We read together Romans chapter 8, verse 30, and this is a kind of a almost contentious. We're not going to be contentious here today, but Paul writes, those He predestined, He also called, and those He called, He also justified, and those He justified, He also glorified. Paul is reminding those folks over in Rome as he's writing that great manifesto of the way that God operates. He says there's a links in the chain of how God works in the life of a believer. If God has called you, that means He's justified you, which is a fancy word to say made right with Him. You're not guilty anymore. Whatever was wrong, whatever was guilty, it's not anymore because that was forgiven. And then one link He doesn't use, but we will use, is the word sanctified. Did you love all these fancy church words today, Dave? We could start our own encyclopedia. But to be sanctified is to become more like Christ all the time. And that is the calling of every believer. You can't escape it. We are being drawn in and called forth to be more Christ-like all the time, thinking less of ourselves, thinking more of God, more of my neighbor, more of my enemy. I'm losing myself and gaining Christ. So here's a great reminder today. Paul says, I am sure of this, that He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. I am sure of this. If God started a work in you, He will finish it. He's not going to quit partway through. You know, one of the fastest, the 100-yard dash in track and field, right? But the 95-yard dash doesn't get you very many trophies. You've got to finish the race, and God has obligated Himself to help us endure to the end.